taught to restrict. And one of the curious things is that Christianity has become much more expansive in a lot of its versions in the past 50, 60 years. Suddenly you find inclusive churches. Of course you can be gay. You go back 40 years, you weren't alive from the look of your face, from the look of your face. But trust me, 40 years ago, you did not go into a church and say, I'm gay. And people wouldn't say, that's okay. We've moved a long way in the past few decades.
You have to be atheist now.
Yes.
And that's
Well, the Pope.
Atheists can still go to heaven.
What blew me away was a YouTube video I saw recently of Billy Graham, who I thought was dead, but he was making a statement with Robert Schuller, where he believes that if you are a truly devout Muslim or Jew who lives a good life, you would not necessarily be excluded from heaven. Now, this is a guy who comes out of the Southern Baptists. I think if he was younger, he'd have been, kicked out of town, but of course they have to respect him, didn't they? Well, it's Billy Graham, come on. There's been an enormous movement here. This is what I believe is happening, this Aeon of Horus that is opening things up. Yeah, those of us who are self-conscious, admitted, professing Thelemites see ourselves as being in the vanguard. I tend to make a division for myself between those of us who feel we need to do it in a self-conscious way. It's just a way of dealing, for me, with who I am, where I've come from, what I've been through. But there are also large numbers of people who are helping bring this thing about, and they may well be Christian. I started talking earlier about Crowley having come out of a certain Christian milieu, and I feel that gave a slant to Thelema that is becoming a limitation. He was very, very, very anti-Christian and very scornful, and yet his book of the law, our book of the law, says all prophets, I've forgotten the quote. You got it? All words are sacred and all prophets are true, save only they understand a little. In other words, any path is going to get you started. It doesn't matter that you are a Catholic or you are a Baptist or whatever it is you are, provided it is actually meeting that requirement, being authentic within yourself. And that is the difference we're moving into here. But my own primary audience, my own primary interest is people who, like myself, are dealing with certain things that, in my case, don't really have much to do with Christianity. My parents didn't give a damn about religion. They were nominal Anglicans, which is the same thing. Maybe not being an atheist, as you said, but an applied agnostic. There is no commitment there. You go in, mumble the words, and go home to lunch. That was it. And they got even less interested in that as the years went by. I had a weird experience when I turned 17. I decided I was going to be a novelist, and since I was too young to write novels, I was going to be a journalist and get some experience and learn how to write. I worked on my local newspaper for 3 years and this was my first exposure to people of faith. We did all of this stuff, a lot of reporting on church events, church socials, and so on and so on. And I had never really talked with religious people before, and they began to scare me. Because obviously something had got hold of them, and they were kind of different. I mean, some of them were crazy, but a lot of them were quite rational human beings. They had jobs and families, and they were very okay. But my God, they were haunted. Now, to be honest, a lot of people who come out of a Christian background are scared of hell. Something about hell always struck me as ridiculous. I'm going to put you down on earth, says God. You're going to go through this rather difficult experience, and provided you're nice to me and follow all the commandments, you might, it's not guaranteed, because there's a judgment day coming, that you can come and live with me after that. It just struck me as ridiculous. Yeah, I couldn't believe in hell. But what was scaring me was the Christians who'd been I was running into them all over the place. They were freaking me out. I started getting incredibly God-haunted in my late teens. It was one of the more disturbing periods in my life. I got deeply scared and depressed of this. And if I had had a prayer at that moment, or a God I could have prayed to, I would have said, please don't save me. I want to go to the other place. It looks safer, it's more fun. The whole business really, really frightened me. God is something that haunts our society. Looking at my audience here today, I would say almost all of us have had a period of difficult encounters with the God thing. I think one of the reasons why fundamentalism flourished here and also in Muslim societies that are being heavily, massively impacted by Western culture is that they feel the old stuff is being overthrown. Again, this Aeon is about a kind of revolution in consciousness, in attitudes, in everything. And people are desperately grabbing onto and clinging onto a very nationalistic form of religion. In the States, it's the Tea Party and flag waving. All of these radical Muslim groups, they're actually nationalistic groups under a religious banner. The slaughter in the Kenyan shopping mall the other week was by people from Al-Shabaab in Somalia. It wasn't, they were killing non-Muslims, but really they were mad as hell that their country, Somalia, had been attacked by Kenyans. It was a nationalistic movement flying under a Muslim banner. So there's a counter-reaction to this whole Aeonic shift, where people are trying to hang on to what they always had, and they are over-exaggerating the rules, the commandments, the necessity to have faith in what we were describing earlier as the very limited sense, as opposed to the bigger one. That is one of the problems we're having to deal with. It's going to be an ongoing thing for some decades. There's no quick and easy way out of it. As I said, dangerous time, but an interesting one to be in. People who come into Thelemic fraternities, as I mentioned, often have some baggage from this. One of the curious things I've noticed a couple of times, primarily with lapsed Catholics, but I imagine it affects other Christians too. People come in and they get their initiation, and they're given some exercises to do. These are basic devotional exercises. Huge occult secret revealed. We practice liberation in our temple, which is the adoration of the sun at dawn, noon, sunset, and midnight. The divine is always present. And there's some other stuff. You're doing meditations on tarot cards and such. I've seen a couple of people come in, and I've had it with Christianity until behind. Now, what happens is that you're starting to stir a level of the human psyche that is way deeper than all your conscious attitudes. And a couple of people I watched as suddenly their Christian selves resurfaced. We were saying 40 years ago, you would never have gone into church and admitted you were gay. They might have prayed for you, but they didn't want you in the church. Thank you very much. The weird thing in magical groups, specifically Thelemic ones, but I imagine in others as well, is you suddenly find yourself having Christian feelings, which is the mind's natural response to a spiritual stimulus that is not just ideas you're playing with, but it's actual prodding at a deep level. I had one person that I was trying to advise on this. He wouldn't fess up what was going on. He finally told me afterwards that he just suddenly had this tremendous feeling of closeness to Jesus. And he ended up becoming a Presbyterian for about 2 months. Now the problem was, he'd left our order and he'd stopped doing the regular devotional stuff that was really getting down to the deeper levels here, because the symbolism we use is very simple, but it gets him deep. After 2 months with the Presbyterians, it had all evaporated. There was nothing left. Jesus was just the stuff he'd already left behind in a different form before when he was a Catholic. And I know he tried 2 or 3 other things, but he never found his way back. And I tried explaining this to him. But I think when he actually tried to look at the idea that this magic stuff is really, really real, it actually works. It's not just playing around with imagination. You're actually digging into the psyche and pulling out the deeper instincts and pulling out the deeper drives and doing something with that stuff. He just hadn't expected that to happen. I don't know what's happened to him these days, whether he's gone back to the Presbyterians, back to the Catholics, or he's a lapsed atheist again. Whatever he's doing, bless him, but he's gone on his way. This was the most extreme case I've seen, but other individuals came in and found this affected them. One of the things that happens when you take initiation, therefore, is a lot of who and what you are gets brought out and up to the surface. People have the idea that if I join your order, you can help me with my self-discipline, and I can be a more spiritual person, and I can have magical powers and stuff. And the answer is yes, if you stick with this. But, big, triple underlined but, initiation affects and stimulates all levels of your psyche. You are going to find yourself facing those insecurities, those bitter resentments you had against your parents or your sister, or they cared more about the dog than me. You've always had this thing against dogs because they loved Fido and didn't really care about you. It's something that has to be processed. And if it's just regular behavioral stuff, mainstream counseling and so on will handle it. But the spiritual perspective is so fundamental to our identity that we have to look at that a little differently and be very plain with ourselves that it needs to be addressed openly and honestly. I meet so many people who come up, oh, you're a pagan, which I don't like the term, I think it's limiting. But the silver pentagram earrings are there, and some of the women wear them too, and it's just, look at this and think, you're just in reaction to who you've been, to what you've been through. Reaction is not abreaction. Abreaction is when you go back, revisit something, and hopefully you're able to cathart it out of your system. I don't think it works very well in a lot of cases. But really you need to include all of this. Now, with